Issues with Cartoons, the show where we discuss cartoons and the comic books that inspire them. My name is Carl Lucas.
And I am Kyle Windle.
And today we'll be discussing Earth Mightiest Heroes, Episode 10, Everything is Wonderful.
Isn't it all wonderful, Carl?
It is wonderful.
Everything about it is wonderful.
We're 10 episodes in, and this is my first time watching Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
Yeah, and we don't talk about this enough, but this is your first time going through this. This is a show I've watched more than once, and this is your first go-around. 10 episodes in, what are your impressions of the show? Before we talk about this episode, just about the series, what's your impression so far?
Wow, my impression 10 episodes in. I love all the callbacks to classic Avengers comics. There's been some really great references throughout this, and they're really good at acknowledging the continuity of 616 as well as plowing ahead with their own stories. There's a few things like the Roddy Downey Jr. Iron Man that I'm not stoked on. And there's some things in this episode in particular I'm a little bit more critical of, although I do love learning more about the Avengers.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite parts about our coverage here is getting to revisit Avengers lore. And Wonder Man, who is the focus of this episode, is a very central part of a lot of the Avengers myth. Although, sometimes it gets a little bit of a bad rap. But this episode, directed by Vinton Heck, written by Brandon Allman, pulls heavily from Avengers issue number 9, which we'll cover in the second half of this episode. But, this episode was interesting. I did like the cold open where it kind of throws you in the middle of the story, but it's from Simon's perspective, Simon Williams' perspective, and you kind of see all the action kind of happen secondhand. I did like that as a device for storytelling. And we have a pretty big first appearance of a heavy hitter Marvel villain here. We have MODOK. I love MODOK.
And the episode opens with MODOK, and there's an experiment at AIM on Wonder Man. Scott Williams, is it?
Simon Williams. Scott Williams is the famous 90s inker. But Simon Williams, voiced by Phil LaMarr, who we've heard up until this point is the voice of Jarvis. Phil LaMarr, Green Lantern from the Bruce Timm Justice League show. He's also Samurai Jack.
Nice.
I mean, I could go on and on about Phil LaMarr. He was in Pulp Fiction. I mean,
nice.
the dude is prolific. So the fact that he's playing Simon Williams is pretty impressive. MODOK, voiced by Wally Wingert, who is the voice of Hank Pym, Giant Man, Ant-Man, and is another classic Lee Kirby character from Tales of Suspense. MODOK, I think I first was introduced to MODOK in the 90s Iron Man cartoon. I think he was kind of like a stooge of the Mandarin on that show, if I'm remembering right.
Definitely where I saw him for the first time as well, being a 90s kid that grew up on X-Men, the animated series, and Batman.
Really striking visual, really just crazy. And they make fun of him a lot in this episode. And you get some pretty good ribs thrown at MODOK.
I did like the humor and stuff like Wasp making fun of him and stuff. And it was good.
So you see in this cold open, you see this fight happening from Simon's perspective. He's in this tank wearing the classic green and red costume that we'll see in the 60s Avengers comic. And then the Avengers come in and interrupt, and the experiment goes wrong. And Simon kind of gets, in my notes I have him being Dr. Manhattaned, if I can turn that into a verb, where he kind of evaporates, and you see like his skeleton and his musculature and his nervous system all kind of fade away, and he's this empty suit. And then the camera turns, and you see him in this purple ionic form, which is the visual that I was most familiar with because I first met Wonder Man in the Busiek Perez Avengers run from the 90s. When that look was first introduced, and he's just this being of pure energy. And then you cut to the opening theme. And you get the new intro lineup. I like thinking of it as like the cartoon corner box of the episode.
And that scene where Iron Man is pulling the screens down on the computer has shots from the other episodes.
Oh, and I didn't pay close enough attention, but yeah, that
Pretty
makes
sure.
sense. I wonder if it changes every time.
And
do you know if it changes every time?
I think
we should start paying attention to
I
that.
think so. Cap is in the intro, though.
Okay.
When they show all the characters.
Yep.
Like I said, Hulk was missing last time. This time, Cap is added. Because Cap is an Avengers. We found him last episode.
Yep, so your lineup now is Cap, Thor, Iron Man, Giant Man, and the Wasp. And then we cut back to the episode 3 hours earlier than the scene that we just saw, where Simon meets with Tony.
Right, and there's a little bit of a business dispute here. Tony's buying his company.
The arc reactors created a monopoly on energy.
And this is the first time that the arc reactor has been mentioned,
I
believe.
Another spillover from the MCU.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. And so the whole time, in my notes, I kind of have that this episode is called Everything is Wonderful, but they might as well called it Tony's a Jerk. Because Tony's a jerk in this episode.
Yeah, a lot of it revolves around
the
him
whole
creating
time,
weapons.
The whole time Simon's just pleading his case, begging Tony to have some sympathy and have some grace, and to give Simon a chance to be competitive in this energy market. And kind of Tony's just distracted the whole time. And he just kind of says, you were the head of your company, but 15 minutes ago I became the majority shareholder of Williams Innovation. And then he acts all surprised when Simon storms off and says, "You're destroying my life."
Yeah, this stuff was very cookie cutter and kind of bored me.
Yeah.
To be honest, I kind of tuned out for a lot of this. I will say I didn't know that Scott Williams or
Simon.
I'm sorry about that. I keep naming Jim Lee's anchor.
It's okay.
I didn't realize that he was Wonder Man.
Yeah.
Until later, I had to Google that because they don't mention Wonder Man by name throughout the episode, really.
Oh, don't they? I didn't catch
I don't think they do. So, me watching it for the first time, I just had no idea. I'm like, who's this purple dude?
So you didn't draw the connection between the guy we saw in the opening scene to the guy in the boardroom that we were talking
He is the Grim Reaper, and it's Eric Williams.
I mean the guy in the ionic being that we saw in the opening.
Yeah, I didn't make that connection. That I knew it was somebody. I knew who MODOK was, obviously, so I had to look up into Wonder Man.
Okay.
I figured this all out later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, because eventually it becomes pretty obvious, but when you're going from that jarring 3 hours earlier.
No, I went through half this episode just who is this energy man? What does this have to do with anything, A
little disorienting.
Yeah.
So after Simon leaves, Hank reveals that he's been there the whole time as Ant-Man working on the hard drive, I guess, and basically calls Tony out. And then as a response, again, Tony is the worst, and he says, I could explain all this to you, but maybe I'll explain it to Janet over dinner and then she can tell it to you. It's just really not polite at all to his teammate. The guy who's, by the way, over in your office helping you with your hard drive, and you're talking about taking his lady?
I think this was to add stakes to the Ultron plot. That's
which we get to later, and I want to talk about that.
Yeah. I don't want to skip ahead too far, but this is all. But
there's some history.
I agree that Hank and Tony's motivation to fight here is kind of weak.
Yeah,
it's not great.
It's
not great.
Tony's just super unlikable, and I will freely admit. I am not a fan of Iron Man as a character, as a concept. I'm not a Tony Stark fan. Billionaire superheroes are a sticking point for me. I'm already not super on board. And then this episode, I was just like, man, you're kind of hard to like. You're a little insufferable. It's kind of a wonder that people hang out with you. But anyway, regardless... we do kind of cut to Wasp and Thor.
And they're going after AIM.
Yeah. And Thor tires of these geeks, which
That's fun.
Thor has amazing lines.
I think Thor has the best lines in all the episodes.
He's so good.
yeah.
He's so great. He's got this highfalutin way of talking, but he talks about these just very simple ideas.
He's
and
the comedic relief. Yeah. It's the best version of Ultimate's Thor.
Yeah.
It's Thor, he doesn't have his alter ego that he has in 616. Yeah. He's just Thor experiencing the world for the first time, and he says ridiculous things about it.
It's like a fun version of like MCU Thor, and they get the tone right of like that epicness and the comedy, the comic fish out of water kind of thing.
They balance it well. You're right. Really well. You're right. It doesn't get too silly.
Yeah, and the line deliveries are really, really great. And so we're kind of cutting between Thor and Wasp chasing AIM, Simon kind of trying to figure out what to do with his company. We're cutting that with Hank and Iron Man fighting and arguing. And then we also cut away to Fury meeting Captain America at the mansion. So we're kind of interspersing all these things. We're cutting to Simon getting picked up by who you mentioned earlier, Eric, the Grim Reaper, who's his brother, we find out.
So Eric Williams debuted in Avengers 52 in 1968 and was created by John Buscema and Roy Thomas. Yeah. Roy Thomas being the writer, John Buscema famously being the artist behind How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
Which is how I first became aware of John Buscema and why he's such an important character in comics history. Mm-hmm. Grim Reaper, interestingly, you mentioned the issue much later than when we first meet Wonder Man in the comics. And in the comics, Wonder Man debuts first, and Grim Reaper appears later to seek revenge for
Were they always
Wonder Man.
Brothers?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so. Lance Henriksen, who fans of the Aliens franchise may recognize as Bishop, is the voice of Grim Reaper, and I love that voice.
That's sweet.
It's a great voice.
Big Alien fan here.
Yeah,
just so Romulus. It was good.
I'm watching these movies for the first time. Actually, I've not seen. I've seen Prometheus and Covenant, but I've not seen any of the classic ones. So I'm working my way through. I know.
Wow.
I'm working my way through, and so we're watching this show, and I'm watching Aliens and Alien 3 and watching Bishop and hearing Lance Henriksen's voice. What a strong voice. Love his voice. Great presence.
Big Alien fan here.
So he takes him to AIM, and not only do we see AIM and we see MODOK, but what else do we see, Carl? Did you make a note of this? Did you see the weapon they're creating?
I do want to mention that MODOK is an acronym that stands for Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing.
Only for killing. And I think they even change it in different... Is it only for killing or only for conquest? Because they needed to appease the standards and practices people.
Yeah.
I don't know if they are always allowed to say that he's for killing.
I think the M stands for multiple things.
Yeah.
Like the M gets
K
switched
and the C at the end change too. We also see the cosmic cube in the background.
Yeah, and that's a lot like Avengers 1 and Captain America First Avenger MCU, the cosmic
Tesseract.
Cube. Yeah, the Tesseract and stuff. It reminded me of that so much that I didn't make a note of it. I was just kind of
I will make a note of it because it is very significant later.
Does it come back?
The cosmic cube... as a piece of Avengers lore and a piece of Marvel lore and specifically Captain America lore, the Cosmic Cube is a MacGuffin that recurs in Captain America comics throughout his publishing history into modern day. I mean, it debuted in a Captain America story. It was a Tales of Suspense 79. It's a pretty important piece. So we're setting that, we're planting that seed here in this episode. But yeah, and speaking of Cap, we go back to Fury is walking Cap into a barbershop in a very classic S.H.I.E.L.D. setting. You see this in old Kirby and Steranko comics where the front of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters is a barbershop and they sit in the barber chair and then they pull a lever and they go down into a secret headquarters.
Now I did appreciate Cap being in the 90s Avengers jacket.
I'm so glad you mentioned the jacket.
They do have...
I wrote a note about it too.
They do have the patch with the A on it, which in the 90s, all the Avengers comics had this jacket. They had the logo.
I see action figures with the bomber jacket, and they're characters I don't care about, but because they have the bomber jacket, I'm like, maybe I should get it. I love that bomber jacket. I want a bomber jacket with the Avengers A on it.
Punishment. You could order the patch. Somebody's got that on.
Someone's got. Hey,
somebody has it.
Contact at IssuesWithCartoons.com. Send me a link to that patch.
Look,
I will put it on a bomber jacket.
I used to roll around Steel City Con in a jacket
with an X-Men patch.
Yes, Xavier's Institute for Gifted Youngsters
have to
patch that I ordered off Amazon. My mom sewed it onto the jacket for me, and then I had sunglasses that look like Cyclops.
Oh, so you were Scott Summers.
Yeah, that's so I would walk around the cons like that and go pick up my back issues.
That's a pretty solid cosplay. That's pretty easy cosplay for you to do.
So there you go. Little story about me.
Well, and like in the 90s, I mean, I think the FF had bomber jackets. I think X-Men obviously had bomber jackets. And the Avengers also.
One little bit of Marvel trivia before we jump to the Cap and Jack Fury conversation.
Yeah.
What does AIM stand for? What is the acronym?
Advanced Idea Mechanics.
Yeah, Advanced Idea Mechanics. No, you got it 100%. Ding, ding, ding. Kyle's got it. Kyle knows his lore.
Marvel trivia. Listen, it's useful in very few circumstances. This is one of them. Yeah, Advanced Idea Mechanics. I didn't have it written down where they debuted. I imagine it was Tales of Suspense. I don't know if they were there as Iron Man or Cap villains. That's something I haven't looked up. But same as Hydra, just a long-standing force of evil within. Like, they were one of those organizations that keep cropping up.
Spectre.
Yeah, they're another Spectre of the Marvel Universe. I kind of think, actually, thinking about my Marvel trivia, I think they might have debuted. Right. I think they might have debuted in a Tales of Suspense with Nick Fury and Captain America teaming up. And I think they were referred to as them before they became AIM.
This brings me to my biggest criticism of this show so far. And I know, like, mainstream Marvel Comics have adapted this recently. But, like, Jack Fury and Nick Fury, like Jack Fury being the previous version of Nick Fury, I just found that all convoluted. And, like, the conversation, in the barbershop. This was an example to me of, like, of just trying to make sense of the continuity too much. Like, you already have Thor, a god from Asgard. You already have Captain America, a man that was frozen in ice, and he's a man out of time. Like, why can't we just have Nick Fury be the same character?
Well, and they already...
That's too much of a stretch.
To your point, they did solve that problem with Zemo very differently.
Yeah.
Right? Because they almost transposed explanations, because in the comics... Zemo, Golden Age Zemo, is the father of modern day Helmut Zemo.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to the solution they have for Jack and Nick Fury. But then in the comics, Nick Fury takes a special formula to keep himself young.
I just think it's so. It's
you also
so
have life model decoys right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear your criticism. I think
it's my least favorite thing.
It's a valid criticism. I come at it differently. I see it as kind of an elegant solution. I think the mistake that the MCU made is disassociating Nick Fury from the Howling Commandos altogether. Like, Sam Jackson is not a feature of the Howling Commandos in Marvel's cinematic universe at all.
Are the Howling Commandos mentioned?
They're in the first Avengers.
Are they in Cap? Yeah, they're in the Cap.
So Dum Dum Dugan's there.
Right.
Izzy Cohen's there. Pinky Pinkerton is there. Dino Manelli is there.
Yeah,
but they don't have Nick there. And I think I would rather have a version of Nick Fury there, even if it's called Jack Fury. I would rather have him be a part of the Commandos than completely ignore him. So to me, I think it's a compromise that works for me.
I'm only saying this, I'm only disagreeing with you too. I have the added context now of reading the comics and stuff where Nick Fury is introduced in the Howling Commandos. And I think it's just, it takes away from his lore.
I agree.
Making him two different characters.
I agree.
Like, because you have this long history of Nick Fury in Howling Commandos to Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. to then working with the Avengers. It's so much more interesting.
Well, yeah, and again, where we're rereading all this stuff, knowing that this World War II sergeant becomes a CIA operative you meet in the Fantastic Four, who then becomes an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. In Tales of Suspense and Strange Tales and all this stuff, you're like following this character's journey through Marvel history, and you lose that. And I think that Marvel's solution and this show's solution does diminish Nick Fury in that way.
It's convoluted,
and I think
it just makes it more convoluted.
Yeah, and I think it's probably a consequence of wanting to have your cake and eat it too.
It is. I get why they do it too.
Yeah.
I can see from like Chris Yost and people working on the show, we have to make this historically make sense. I get it. It's just not what I personally would have done.
And I wonder if they hadn't already used that solution for Zemo, if they wouldn't have done it with Nick. But maybe doing it with Zemo and Nick Fury was maybe too much in their minds. Maybe they thought having one character from World War II live this long was already stretching it too much. Because this is another thing where we talked about last episode. We talked about that 20-year gap between the end of World War II and the return of Captain America.
Right.
And that gap grows bigger and bigger every year of publishing.
And
it becomes more and more difficult and convoluted to explain that,
and Fury
that gap.
Is that way.
And Nick Fury is one of those characters. There's a handful of characters that becomes harder to explain that distance in time. Steve, it's easy because you just say he's frozen in ice longer. But
we're talking about Magneto still being a Holocaust survivor.
He's another character.
We're just getting lost in the
sliding timeline.
Yeah.
It's, But I hear your criticism. I don't think it's a bad criticism. I think it's a valid one. I disagree as it being a poor solution. But I do agree that it does diminish Nick Fury's interest. That's interesting.
Me just watching the show for the first time, I'm like, wow, this is very convoluted for no reason.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure to a new viewer that it would come across as not convoluted.
Well, because we at least have the lore in our
me and you are big Marvel fans. I think somebody new coming into the show would watch it and be like, "Wait, there's a Jack Fury," and then be a little lost.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it would be interesting to talk to if you're someone who's watching the show for the first time, coming in cold, and you don't know anything about Nick Fury or the Howling Commandos or Shield or Captain America. I don't know if there are many of you out there. But if you are someone who's not super steeped in that, let us know if it felt convoluted to you also, and we'd love to get that perspective.
Let's move on.
Let's move on
because I said.
But now we're going to what you alluded to earlier with Hank and Tony, kind of airing out their dirty laundry. We talked about Ultron. We've seen Ultron up to this point. They're basically drones that are guarding the big house.
They've been established.
And so now we kind of learn the history of Ultron, and I think this is so interesting.
This is another big slice of the lore and differences from the comics here.
So different.
Hank Pym is the one that creates Ultron in the comics, but here it's Hank Pym and Tony,
which is such an interesting kind of overlap to what we will see in 2015 Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron has Tony participate in the creation of Ultron.
Tony is the one.
And subs out Hank for Bruce.
Yes.
And so, very interesting that this show kind of arrives at that conclusion that Tony must have been involved in Ultron before the MCU even came to that conclusion. But, so we learned that Tony kind of helped develop Ultron and then tried to go behind Hank's back and sell Ultron as a weapon to the military. Again, the subtitle of this episode should be Tony is a jerk.
Yeah, it gets back to Tony trying to repent for his sins of working with the military-industrial complex, putting all these weapons out into the world. And as Iron Man, he's trying to fix that, which is, his motivation in the MCU.
And provides a really good contrast between the pacifist Hank and the weapons dealer, Tony, and kind of showing how they're both alike but also very different.
But Hank's just kind of screaming at him here, "You're a weapons dealer, this is your fault." Essentially, that's what the conversation is.
Yeah,
essentially.
His whole thing is like, Simon has every right to be mad at you because this is who you are. Like, you are only interested in money and business, and you don't care about the consequences it has on people. And that in a nutshell is what makes Hank very different. He's very much people oriented. He cares about all life. And Tony, while he's trying to be better, has a history of not caring at all about life and only caring about being the number one businessman. And it's a very interesting conversation. I don't think it's entirely fair to Tony, but I do think it is a valid critique of who Tony was and who Tony maybe still is trying not to be.
Yeah, Tony's trying to change. You know, he's a true Catholic. He's going out here. He's repenting.
Well, I would be very surprised to learn that Tony is a Catholic, but he is very, very regretful of his past sins.
I'm excited, as someone that's never seen this before. I'm excited to see where this goes with Ultron.
Man,
I like Ultron. What is it? James Spader that plays
James Spader.
Yeah, James Spader from Stargate.
Oh yeah, seen Stargate?
Yeah, Stargate plays, Ultron in the MCU.
Boston Legal's James Spader.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think he's in Pretty in Pink's
James Spader. He's in The Office.
Yeah. In The Office too as the boss. I forgot about that.
He's so good. All right, so we cut back from that conversation. We cut back to, again, this episode has a lot going on. So
it does.
Wasp and Thor enter AIM, and we're back to that scene we saw in the cold open, but now we're more of an omniscient point of view, and they meet MODOK. And again, Thor dropping one of the best lines where he's like, just some kind of that is a very big head. And he says later, it's like a frost giant's head on an infant's body.
One of what's crazy is I wrote that on my quotes too
in
my notes because it was so funny. He's like a frost giant's head on an infant's body.
You just can't get over how big that head is.
Yeah, Thor has all the zingers.
It's really good.
No, Thor is the comedic relief in the show. Honestly, and Wasp.
Yeah, and Wasp plays so well off of all these characters. She plays great off of Hank. She plays great off of Thor. She plays great off of the Hulk. She's such a good, dynamic, interactive character.
She's so much more fun than 616.
Yes.
Like in 616, she's obsessed with Hank, and she's just like spooning over him the whole time.
Very much a Lee Kirby woman.
Yeah. In this show, she's
got agency, she's got personality.
She has a little bit more of her own identity.
Yeah, I agree.
She's not just like swooning over Hank. Like Wasp is very much doing her own thing in the show, which is refreshing.
I do love that scene though when they find out that the base is a spaceship, and she's like, "Oh, Hank would love this." Like,
yeah.
Again, and this goes back. I've talked about this too, where you understand why those two would like each other, Hank and Janet. Like. And you can tell that they really do care about each other, but while also having their own thing going on, to your point. Mm-hmm. So Wonder Man flies away, having survived the botched experiment, and attacks Iron Man.
He beats the crap
out of Iron Man.
He destroys his suit.
Yeah, and Ant-Man swoops in, proving himself to be very effective, trying to talk him down, but failing, becomes Giant Man, gets pummeled as Giant Man, and we're kind of cutting between this fight with Giant Man and Iron Man with Wonder Man, and then Wasp and Thor are still kind of dealing with MODOK, and then when MODOK leaves, they go and rejoin the fight with Wonder Man, and Thor has another chance to dig on science and says science should never be trusted when AIM
is critical of it.
Very critical.
Yeah.
And so Hank tries to fight Wonder Man, and Wonder Man outgrows Giant Man. And just as Hank is starting to make a breakthrough, he's almost got Simon talked down. Tony the Jerk comes in and totally derails, undercuts everything that Hank had just tried to do with talking Simon down, and basically just escalates the situation. And Cap comes in on his motorcycle that Jack's son gave him. And he's wearing that Ultimates helmet and headgear.
He's got a little bit more of the old school Captain America garb. It's a costume change. I noticed that in here, and that's from Ultimates. That's Ultimates 1.
Ultimates 1, yeah. I always loved that look. I had that action figure. I don't think I do anymore, but it is a cool design.
Oh, no, it stuck with me. It was cool.
And the whole time we're kind of noticing that Simon's ionic field is destabilizing. He's kind of becoming... he's kind of falling apart a little bit.
Yeah.
And so Hank solves the problem again. Not as Giant Man, but as Hank Pym. And he says that he needs to find a containment unit for Simon. So Tony takes him to the arc reactor. And here Tony's starting to
go into it too.
And Tony's starting to sound desperate. He's starting to kind of realize this is his only chance to fix the mistake he made. Mm-hmm. And he runs out of time. Simon fades away, and this is when Tony kind of reveals that when he was telling Simon that he bought the company, he messed up because he was trying to tell him he bought the company to save the company because he appreciated Simon's work.
Why wouldn't you just
say it, Tony? Earlier. Tony, quit being such a jerk and just say, hey, Simon, like, you don't need to worry. I bought the company so that you can keep doing what you're doing. Like, just be a human being, Tony Stark. Just say what you wanted to say instead of being such a dismissive jerk and creating this whole episode of problems.
Some of that was pretty rough.
I didn't love it. But we do get a moment at the very, very end. Similar to the coda we had at the end of last episode, where the episodes end, the conflicts ended, and then come in Enchantress and Executioner, now joined by Zemo.
Yeah, a little bit more of a tease here.
Simon has reconstituted himself. He's come back.
And we have an evil team forming. And that's the tease. It's similar to last episode where it's Enchantress and Executioner.
Yeah. Worth noting too that it's Enchantress. Her magic is what is keeping Simon alive. So worth noting that.
That is mentioned. Yeah, no, you're right. That is worth noting.
And this is actually a tie-in to when we see the ionic form introduced in the comics. It's Scarlet Witch's magic that keeps Wonder Man constituted and alive. So here it's Enchantress, but it is worth noting that she's leveraging her use of magic to keep Wonder Man alive as kind of a way of convincing him to join their side. So worth making that note, because when we come back from the break, unless you have anything more to say about episode 10.
I don't, other than Jack Fury's convolted and Power Man or Wonder Man. I thought Wonder Man was dead for sure. The tease got me where I was like, I was like,
Wonder Man dying, classic staple in that character's history. One of the reasons why some people don't take him very seriously. Yeah. Also funny you mistakenly called him Power Man, because those two characters are very connected in comics. But nevertheless,
when we return, Avengers 9.
Avengers 9. To going from Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes 10 to Avengers 9. We're going back.
That's right. Comics more back.
Welcome back to Issues with Cartoons, the show where we not only talk about the cartoons, but we talk about the issues. And the issue of the day is The Avengers, issue number 9 from 1964, where Marvel proudly introduces Wonder Man, the newest, most dynamic surprise character from the world-famous House of Ideas. This is a Jack Kirby cover with Dick Ayers, but this art throughout the issue is going to be the work of Don Heck with Dick Ayers, written by Stan Lee. I think this is the first issue of Avengers that Don Heck draws.
Okay.
So Kirby does a lot of Avengers work. He does the first chunk of issues. Don Heck takes over for a little bit. Kirby kind of dips in and out. And then Don Heck has a pretty decent run on Avengers for a little while. But he superbly illustrates this as lead notes in the captions and the credit boxes. And this is our introduction to Wonder Man. This also features a lot of characters we've met on the show before. We see Zemo, we see Enchantress and Executioner.
And our issue coverage always ties in with the episode we talk about. And this is first Wonder Man. We have Zemo, Enchantress, Executioner on the cover. We have another version of Iron Man's armor.
That's right.
For those keeping track.
We don't have the fins anymore. We have the kind of rounded faceplate.
Changing up yet again. Is that Tiny Head? Is that supposed to be Janet? I don't understand that choice.
That's Wasp.
Yeah. I don't understand that choice to make her head so small.
Yeah, well, they made Giant Man's head a little bigger. So they're just trying to do the scaling. So, Carl, you've probably not read this before.
I haven't.
What did you think of issue number 9?
I thought this was fine. Don Heck was quite a switch up from Kirby. I wish I read more of the issues in between. I do like the weight of Zemo's helmet on this splash page, or I should say his mask.
Yeah.
It's scary and intimidating. I like just that he doesn't have pupils.
Yeah.
I think he's more intimidating when he doesn't have pupils.
I agree.
I noticed in the show they animated him. He had white pupils. I don't know, very minor thing, but he's kind of got this cape thing going on. He's got I don't know. It's a fun splash page introducing it. Don Heck has a lot more organic shapes to his line work.
Yes.
Kirby's a little bit more blocky, but a little bit more dynamic. And there's a few quibbles with the art I might point out. It's just mostly character design things, but I think that comes from just Kirby didn't draw this issue, and I'm being a prick.
Well, we talked about Don Heck. Well, everyone has their taste and everyone has their critiques. I think it's an unenviable job to follow Jack Kirby on anything. We talked about Don Heck when we talked about Iron Man, when we talked about Tales of Suspense 39.
Right.
And we talked about how Don Heck has a lot of influence from Milton Caniff and old adventure newspaper strips. He did a lot of romance comics and things like that. And I think you can tell in how he draws some of the people just standing around talking, and we kind of see some of his his renderings of faces and stuff. I think there, people in ordinary clothing, I think there you kind of see where Heck might be the most comfortable.
You can see on page 2, there's, Captain America's ears are rendered.
Yeah.
Heavily under the mask, and I don't know if that was the colorist should have colored the ears.
It's throughout the issue.
It's things like that make me point it out and be like, well, it's definitely not Kirby, but there's stuff on page 3 with Enchantress casting the spell that could very well be a Kirby panel.
Well, and actually, if we go back to page 2 and you look at that first panel, there's a panel in Avengers issue 4 that we covered last episode where he's
a lot like this.
It's a similar composition, and I think there you can kind of tell the difference where one is a little more static and a little rougher, and this one is than this one, where this one feels a little more stilted compared to the energy of that Avengers 4 panel. So again, I don't think it's unfair to. I don't think it's very far apart from what most people would say about Don Heck compared to Kirby. I don't think it means that Don Heck is a bad artist. I think he's a great artist. I think you can tell where his strengths are.
And
I think it's just hard to contrast it when you're following the king of comics, the king of superhero comics.
There's some crossover here too with Dick Ayers inking this,
sure,
as well, and he inked Kirby as well. So it's it's comparable.
So getting to the plot of the story, the Avengers are stopping Captain America, who's fantasizing about beating the crap out of Baron Zemo, because Zemo's the one who killed Bucky. And we're kind of cutting away to a flashback in issue number 7, which we did not cover on the show, but where Thor has sent Zemo, the Enchantress, and the Executioner off to a different universe through a space warp. And so Enchantress uses her powers in a very kind of psychedelic sequence to bring them back to the Amazon jungle where Zemo's headquarters is located. And they kind of come up with a plot to use Simon Williams as a kind of plot device to defeat the Avengers. Because Zemo has an idea of how to defeat them from within. And so you see Enchantress kind of and Executioner actually luring Simon Williams to South America, to the Amazon. And we also kind of check in with the other Avengers to see what they're doing. We kind of get a sense of what's going on in their own adventures in their own books. I have to point out every time Hank is a jerk to Janet, and we see it on page 5.
Oh, he's a huge jerk.
Enormous jerk. Janet, you could do better.
Yeah, he says, "How did I ever get stuck with you?"
Honestly,
why didn't you team up with Fred Astaire? And she's like, "You haven't taken me dancing in weeks.
Yeah.
Why don't you break up?
Just dump him. I mean, we know he's just going to treat you worse, frankly.
Yeah, pretty rough.
And then meanwhile, we talked about how the death of Bucky Barnes is such a major part of Captain America's mythology, and it's on display here where he's just wanting to avenge his death and really just wanting to get after Zemo.
Now, there's a whole plot here with Iron Man, too, where Happy and Pepper don't know. They assume Tony Stark's dead because they haven't seen Tony Stark, and Iron Man's in the armor. Could somebody tell me where this takes place?
Right.
Where's the story
interesting that we don't have any kind of asterisk notation note from the editor. But this is kind of one of those things that the Avengers, as an advertisement, as a commercial for other Marvel books, this is kind of that thing we mentioned in last episode where the Avengers really serves as a place for Marvel to kind of show off how interconnected it is. And these are all storylines, presumably, that are happening around these other titles that are coming out on the newsstand. And maybe a kid in 1964 is reading this and is like, what's going on with Iron Man? Why do they think Tony's dead? I'm going to go back and buy Tales of Suspense number 57 or whatever. Go buy
that issue off the rack at my grocery store.
Right.
Or whatever. Don Blake needs to go help his patients.
Right. So we're just kind of establishing this. These people all have a life of their own. But then we're cutting back to the Amazon jungle where Simon Williams is strapped to a table, much like he was in the episode. Only instead of MODOK, it's Zemo. And instead of AIM, it's Enchantress and the Executioner. And he pulls a switch and
it's creating Wonder Man, essentially, right?
In a flash of light, he becomes Wonder Man.
I do like how Zemo's mask's rendered. I think he looks menacing.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's people make fun of it sometimes because it's pink and purple, but honestly, it's a solid look. It's a solid design.
It's no different than G.I. Joe. It kind of reminds me of Cobra Commander.
I get that a little bit. Yeah, that saggy mask. But you get that hint of nobility with the kind of furry collar and the crown, and that kind of mad science thing with that weird harness on his chest and everything. Yeah. I think it's a good look. I think it's a solid design. So anyway, we get a kind of sequence where we kind of see the powers that Wonder Man has. After he's kind of zapped, they shoot him with a gun, and
just to be sure.
Luckily, he's bulletproof, and they put him in this costume. And I guess Kirby must have designed this costume because he put it on the cover. A goofy costume, a goofy costume that we see on the page.
Really, 8. Kyle?
What? It's a little goofy.
Yeah, you think it's goofy. The design, the kind of, I don't know, under the W or whatever, the kind of swirly thing, that looks like they weren't sure what to do there. And Wonder Man's costume definitely evolves after this.
A lot of times.
Good reason.
Yeah, the headgear, I think, is my sticking point.
I was being sarcastic earlier, this costume is.
I thought you were about to disagree with me and we were about to fight.
No, I wasn't about to defend Wonder Man's costume. No.
I mean, Wonder Man, like you say, I don't know if they ever perfectly nailed down a look for Wonder Man until, the Busiek Perez run, honestly.
Yeah, not
I think
the 80s,
the early 2000s is kind of where he finally settles into a look that he's stuck to. And even that's not a super strong design, but they've always kind of struggled with a look for Wonder Man. But anyway, the plot for this scheme after we kind of see Wonder Man show off his different powers, we find out that they're going to create a scenario where the Avengers recruit Wonder Man and he's going to defeat them from within. Kind of a classic, like, insider mole story.
Yeah, he's going to destroy them from the inside.
And notable that, like, this is one of the early new members of the Avengers is going to be a character who's trying to take them out from within, an infiltrator.
This is a new plot.
Yeah.
It's a new plot. It's not the Avengers fighting Hulk again.
Right. So, although
it's welcome.
Although, interestingly, like, Space Phantom's plot in Avengers 2 was to defeat the Avengers from within by impersonating them. So now it's just going to be a brand new character who's going to take him on, try to woo his way into their ranks. Yeah, I'm looking at this design. Even the little wristbands, like, overly complicated shapes and just a busy design, which is very atypical of the very iconic simple designs of Kirby. So must have just been kind of banged out real quick in his dungeon, which is what he called his art studio in his basement.
And speaking of Kirby, page 9 is like a Kirby layout.
Yeah.
Except this John Heck, that 4-panel grid.
You do kind of wonder if maybe Kirby had a little bit of coaching for Don Heck on those pages. Because you're right, a lot of those feel a lot more dynamic and a lot more like Kirby.
The layouts are like what Kirby would have done.
Yeah. So the scheme is they're going to rob a bank, and the Avengers, I don't know what the gods of Asgard are doing robbing a bank, but the Avengers are going to stop them, and Wonder Man is going to debut and take on the Masters of Evil single-handedly and impress the Avengers. Loose. Yep.
Yeah, so Executioner, Zemo, and Enchantress, they're all fighting the Avengers at this point. Yeah, page 11, panel 2, outline was like really thick around that gun or whatever that's getting smashed, that it threw me out of the story. Reading it a little bit.
I think it's trying to convey that the barrel is closer to you than the muzzle that he's grabbing, but it's so thick. And then you have that thin line of the actual barrel that it does kind of distort the perspective a little bit.
When did Wasp's costume change?
I was going to bring this up too. Earlier when we were talking about what a jerk Hank was, I did notice that her costume was different.
She's got a W on her chest.
She's got a W and no mask in that panel. Does she have a mask later? I don't think she has a mask. She has no headgear at this point.
No headgear.
So yeah, we're starting to play with the Wasp's costume a little bit. It's so funny they decided to put a W on her costume the same issue that Wonder Man shows up. Yeah. So you have this panel with two characters with a W.
A lot of W's here.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of W's happening.
But Wonder Man's costume is definitely an L.
And I'm not sure this, speaking of L's, I'm not sure Iron Man's redesign on his headgear works as well either. There's a lot of stuff where it looks asymmetrical, like the colorist and the inker can't seem to line up this triangle coming down Tony's head on any of the panels.
Like Widow's Peak kind of thing.
Yeah, it looks off more than it looks on most of the time, and they keep changing the size of his head throughout. I'm sorry I'm harping on the art so much on this episode, but you have to understand I've been spoiling myself with Kirby artwork this whole time. So
and if I can just come to Don Heck's defense a little bit, I do think that there are some scenes I think the cop's face on page 12 or even Wonder Man's face in the bottom corner of page 12, I think those are good drawings. I think there's good stuff in here. I think what what we're both feeling is this kind of fumbling with him trying to figure out the Marvel dynamism of an Avengers book. I think there's some fumbling with the inking and coloring work. Yeah, I do wonder too, since this is Don Heck taking over for Kirby, if there was some sort of scheduling, because some of this does feel rough. I'm looking at the leg that Cap has propped up on page 12. I don't want to say at all that Don Heck is not a good artist. I think he's a great artist. I just don't know.
I'm not saying that at all.
I don't know if the casting for this book on this particular issue is is right at this point. Now he will go on to he'll do some great Kang the Conqueror comics with the Avengers. He'll do a lot with the Kooky Quartet, which is what the Captain America, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Hawkeye team up is generally called. He does a lot of those issues, and those are pretty strong from my memory. But anyway, they recruit Wonder Man, who almost kind of totally flubs his pitch to join.
His cover.
He totally blows his cover, but Enchantress patches it and makes it right. And so he convinces them that he's dying, and the Avengers sort of corral around him and try to come up with a way to cure him. And they're really trying hard to the point where he's kind of taken by how selfless they're devoting themselves to him. And
you're talking about page 13? It's a cool panel layout. I like the arcs for the panels and stuff. It's fun. It's a cool page layout to Don Heck's defense here.
Yeah, no, I like it.
It is cool. It's a fun page layout.
It's very inventive.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, off-panel, they have kidnapped the Wasp. And here we kind of start a series of events where the storytelling starts having some issues with me. Because a lot of the explanations are in the dialogue. So, Wasp is captured. And the Avengers go looking for her. And they find her at Zemo's lair. And Zemo has a giant magnet to incapacitate Iron Man.
It's a great scene.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Thor, Wonder Man punches Thor, but we only see that it's Wonder Man because of the wrist gauntlet in the punch. And it's explained in the dialogue.
It's hard to track that.
Wonder Man throws him into a hole and covers it with a boulder so he can't get to Mjolnir.
It breaks the golden rule of comics: show, don't tell.
Show, don't tell. There's a lot of telling in these panels.
Yeah.
Giant Man proves ineffectual again because Wonder Man takes him down very quickly and hits him in the head with a rock. But then Giant Man's able to dislodge, he breaks the magnet, so Iron Man gets loose. But then Wonder Man chumps him by swinging him around by the legs. So,
yeah, you know who Wonder Man looks like? He looks like a He-Man character.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah, he looks like an 80s He-Man character, in a 60s comic book.
It's such a...
it's not a great design.
I feel like it was just setting him up for failure because I feel like all of his designs struggle. And there are other pretty weak Wonder Man designs.
Can you guys guess that I didn't enjoy this episode as much as Avengers issue 4?
It's tough coming from one of the best Avengers issues of all time to
Wonder
else.
Man.
To Wonder Man. But yeah, you get kind of the Avengers kind of getting picked apart. Yeah, and Iron Man, tries to hold his own against Wonder Man, but manages to get the rock that's covering Thor moved just enough to where Don Blake is able to eventually reach up when no one's noticing. But before Don Blake comes in, Wonder Man starts having a crisis of conscience. And he starts thinking, maybe we shouldn't be trying to take out the Avengers. They're good people. They tried to help me when they thought I was sick.
Maybe I am an Avenger.
Maybe I am worthy of being an Avenger. And so he disrupts Zemo's plan.
Zemo, yeah.
And eventually...
Executioner starts brawling with him.
Yeah, Enchantress has to make kind of a smokescreen to help them stage a getaway. And before they can blow up the tunnel behind them, Wasp and Giant Man stop the Avengers from chasing in after them. And they turn around and see Wonder Man's not doing so good. He's laying on the ground, dying.
Yeah.
And perhaps, every man dreams of doing one noble thing in his life, and knowing that he didn't live in vain because he stopped Zemo from killing the Avengers. And then he dies because he, this whole time, has been kind of blackmailed by Zemo. Because earlier we learned that his powers were only were not only giving him all this ability, but they were also killing him. And Zemo's antidote was the only thing keeping him alive, which is similar to the setup we had at the end of the cartoon where Enchantress's magic was going to be the one thing
keeping him alive.
And this, it's Zemo's antidote. So it's interesting how they're mixing and matching elements of the Wonder Man story to fit the narrative that they had.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think it's creative. I think it's a good solution.
And we lose Executioner, though. Like, Executioner gets lost in the shuffle. It's worth noting.
Oh, yeah, he's not in that panel.
And Zemo leave, and, Enchantress turns and faces the camera, and she's like, "Where's Executioner? He's gone."
And they totally drop that thread. They don't even bring up the he's just, so maybe he shows up later in a different circumstance. But I totally forgot about that.
I just wanted to mention that real quick before we get to the ending, which is basically Wonder Man passes away in Iron Man's arms.
Yeah. So it's interesting because Wonder Man dies in this issue, and he doesn't come back until issue 151.
Jesus.
That's a long time.
That is a long time.
Grim Reaper shows up in issue 52, like you mentioned. So he's not forgotten. He also will show up in, like, whenever they do the Legion of the Unliving, they would do Wonder Man appearances there. He kind of is like this looming presence, like this great tragedy in Avengers history. But where Wonder Man is important, and where we might see him brought up again later, is it becomes explained that in the scene where they are trying to find a cure for Simon's ailment, Hank takes a scan of his brain patterns. We don't see it in this issue, but later they create a scene. They retcon it.
He did that.
Those brain patterns are stolen by Ultron and are placed in the Vision. And so the Vision shares brain patterns with Simon Williams' Wonder Man. So Wonder Man becomes important because he's tied heavily into the Vision. So a few episodes ago, I had talked to you about the Hank Pym family tree and how maybe the only thing more convoluted than the Hank Pym family tree is the Scott Summers family tree.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine this tree now. We have Ant-Man and the Wasp. We have Ultron, who has ties to the Vision, who now has a connection to Wonder Man and the Grim Reaper. Okay?
And Vision also has ties to the Scarlet Witch.
And who also has ties to the original Human Torch. And the Scarlet Witch has ties to Magneto and Quicksilver, who also has ties to Polaris and has ties to any other number of things. It goes incredibly complicated. So if we're keeping track of the Hank Pym family tree, this is yet another element that ties in with Avengers mythology pretty heavily. So it may not seem consequential on its face because it was sort of a one-off at the time, but
writers returns.
Yeah, he does.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts on Avengers 9?
No, I think I've said pretty much all I have to say about it.
Yeah, Donick does well. Art's a little more organic. It's not Kirby.
I think it's the action scenes when it becomes apparent that it is Don Heck taking over for Kirby, and that his strengths may lie elsewhere.
It's a fine issue. I think you have some points on Wonder Man's design not being that good.
Yeah.
There's room for improvement.
But an interesting setup where you have a villain who's creating a hero to infiltrate the superhero team.
It is a new plot.
Kind of a Green Power Ranger scenario. I mean, it's
right.
It is interesting. I do like that as a setup and a pretty tragic ending that gets mined for more stories later in a few different ways, whether it's Grim Reaper looking for revenge, or it's Ultron trying to exploit some scans that Hank used for his own evil ends, or it's the resurrection of Wonder Man years and years later.
How does everyone else feel about Wonder Man? I want everybody to let me know. After the episode and after the comic, I'm not a huge Wonder Man fan, but maybe I'm just missing these ties. You keep bringing
I
up
have
to
a
later
soft spot
Avengers
for him,
lore.
I admit.
Yeah. You keep bringing up these ties to Avengers lore and the Hank Pym family tree and stuff. I don't have any of that. Going into this, it was just fairly straightforward. It was fine. I don't have any big opinions.
Maybe
really.
your opinion will change when the Wonder Man Disney Plus TV show comes out, and you'll become.
I doubt that. I doubt that.
Oh, there's
We'll
always
see.
hope.
We'll see.
I'll say that this definitely is a more
can't be
interesting
swayed.
Wonder Man than what we get in Avengers United We Stand, but or United They Stand, whatever the TV show was, the show before this. Which
I can be enchanted to think otherwise at times, maybe.
Well, we'll have to execute a plan to Zemo Wonder Man somewhere. Guys, I'll never do that again. I promise.
That was a lot of puns.
Yeah,
a lot of puns per minute.
I'm sorry. You wonder how that happens. All right, Carl, what do you have to plug?
You can see my comics at www.carllucasdraws.bsky.social. I have comics, mini comics. Check it out. Check out my online store. Tell your friends.
He's available for commissions. You should make Carl draw this Wonder Man costume.
Yeah, send me your Wonder Man commissions. Kyle, what do you have to plug?
You can commission me to draw that Zemo mask. I'll do that, but I'll do some commissions. You can go to kofi.com/kylewindle. I also have my own comic book bear, Cornelius Armstrong, Adventures and Antics, which is a mustachioed strong man at a circus. You also have Thunderduck and Mad Science Rejects. For the show, you can email us at contact@issueswithcartoons.com. We are also on Instagram and Twitter, and we're on YouTube. Please like, follow, subscribe, share, play us during your holiday shopping so everyone can hear what you're listening to. Tell all your friends. Tell your comic book reading friends. Go to your comic store and tell people about us. Just spread the word. Get people talking about cartoons and the comics that inspire them.
That's right. More comics next time, and then I'll enchant you later.
Oh, no. Are we going to do this every time now?
Enough said.